Abraham Lincoln, widely esteemed as one of America's most influential leaders, left an enduring impact on the nation during his presidency. As the first extensively photographed president, Lincoln's images provide profound visual insights into his remarkable journey and the tumultuous era he lived through. Recognizing the potential of photography, Lincoln embraced this medium to connect with the American people, offering them a novel way to view their leader. Each photographic portrait captured Lincoln's stoic expression, furrowed brow, and distinctive features, resonating deeply with the public and humanizing a figure entrusted with immense responsibilities during one of the nation's most challenging periods. John George Nicolay, secretary to President Lincoln, famously remarked, "There are many pictures of Lincoln. There is no portrait of him." This statement highlights the multifaceted nature of Lincoln's visual representation, which evolved through numerous photographic depictions. These iconic images chronicle Lincoln's life, from his early political career to his ascent to the presidency, providing invaluable insights into his personal and political evolution. 1846, by Nicholas H. Shepard. This daguerreotype represents the earliest known photographic portrait of Abraham Lincoln. It is said to have been taken in 1846 by Nicholas H. Shepard, shortly after Lincoln's election to the United States House of Representatives. Shepard operated the daguerreotype miniature gallery in Springfield, which he advertised in the Sangamo Journal. The gallery was situated above J. Brookie's drugstore. Notably, Shepard also pursued legal studies at Lincoln and Herndon's law office, underscoring the close ties between early photography and Lincoln's professional circle. October 27, 1854, by Johann Karl Friedrich Polycarpus von Schneidau. This photograph is the second, earliest known image of Abraham Lincoln, originally owned by George Schneider, a former editor of the Illinois Staatszeitung, a prominent anti-slavery German newspaper in the West. Schneider first met Lincoln in 1853 in Springfield, where he recognized Lincoln's growing significance. In 1854, during Lincoln's visit to Chicago, Isaac N. Arnold arranged a dinner where Schneider was invited to dine with Lincoln. Afterward, while the group was downtown, they visited a traveling photography studio where Lincoln had this photograph taken specifically for Schneider. This image not only captures Lincoln's likeness, but also underscores the personal connections and significance of early photography in Lincoln's political and social circles. February 28, 1857, by Alexander Hessler. I possess a letter from Mr. Hessler, wherein he describes how Lincoln came in to arrange for a sitting so that members of the bar could obtain prints of his photograph. Lincoln humorously remarked that he didn't understand why his colleagues wanted a picture of such a homely face. Joseph Medill accompanied Lincoln to the photography session. According to Medill, the photographer attempted to smooth down Lincoln's hair, but Lincoln disliked the result and ran his fingers through it before sitting for the portrait. This account was noted by H. W. Fay of DeKalb, Illinois, the original owner of the photograph. The image captures Lincoln just before his Senate nomination. Unfortunately, the original negative was lost in the Great Chicago Fire. This anecdote provides insight into Lincoln's personal interactions and the process behind capturing his image during a significant political moment. 1858, by Roderick M. Cole. The photograph you possess of Abraham Lincoln is a reproduction of a daguerreotype that I produced in my studio in Peoria during the Lincoln and Douglas campaign. I invited him to sit for me, and when I was ready to take the photograph, he remarked, "I cannot see why all you artists want a likeness of me, unless it is because I am the homeliest man in the state of Illinois." This anecdote was recounted in a letter dated July 3, 1905, addressed to David McCulloch by R. M. Cole. Lincoln himself favored this particular image and frequently signed copies for his admirers. He even presented a copy to his stepmother in 1861. This photograph gained widespread use during the 1860 presidential campaign, appearing on campaign ribbons. Lincoln was known to autograph photographic prints for visitors, making this image a cherished and widely circulated representation of the president. This account sheds light on Lincoln's perception of his own appearance and the popularity of this particular photograph during his presidency. 1858, by unknown photographer. This portrait was originally owned by a Civil War soldier from Parma, Ohio, and was featured in the Cleveland Plain Dealer on February 12, 1942, sourced from a print in the Anthony L. Maresh collection. It is likely a photographic reproduction of one of two daguerreotypes, both of which are now lost, that were taken in Ohio. This photograph's connection to a Civil War veteran underscores its historical significance and highlights its origins as a reproduction of early daguerreotype images of Abraham Lincoln, once present in Ohio but regrettably no longer extant. This description emphasizes the portrait's lineage and its ties to historical photography during the Civil War era. May 7, 1858, by Abraham M. Byers. This photograph was previously part of the Lincoln Monument collection in Springfield, Illinois. During the occasion it was taken, Mr. Lincoln was wearing a linen coat. This image is considered a faithful likeness of Lincoln as he appeared during the Lincoln-Douglas campaign. August 26, 1858, by T.P. Pearson. Mr. Magee happened to stay overnight in Macomb at the same hotel as Mr. Lincoln, and the next morning they took a stroll around town. Upon Mr. Magee's suggestion, they visited Mr. Pearson's studio, resulting in the creation of this ambrotype. When Mr. Lincoln entered the studio, he appeared somewhat unfamiliar with the camera and humorously asked, "Well, do you want to take a shot at me with this thing?" He declined to fix up for the photograph, believing it wouldn't truly represent him if he did. Many of Lincoln's old acquaintances in Illinois have praised this picture as the most accurate likeness of him they've seen. The clothing he wore in this photograph is the same outfit he wore during his famous debates with Senator Douglas. This account provides a charming glimpse into the casual circumstances surrounding the creation of this ambrotype and its significance as a faithful representation of Lincoln during a notable period in his political career. September 26, 1858, attributed to Christopher S. German. In 1858, during the series of joint debates between Lincoln and Douglas in Illinois, this city served as one of the meeting locations. At that time, Lincoln's stepmother was residing with my father and mother. Lincoln stayed at our house, and as he was leaving, my mother asked him for a picture. Lincoln responded, "Well, Harriet, when I get home, I will have one taken for you and send it to you." Shortly after, my mother received the photograph, which she still possesses, already framed from Springfield, Illinois, along with a letter from Lincoln. In the letter, Lincoln remarked that the photograph was not very flattering but was the best that could be achieved from such a poor subject. He mentioned that he had the photograph taken specifically for my mother. This anecdote, shared by Mr. K.N. Chapman of Charleston, Illinois, provides a personal and touching account of Lincoln's gesture towards his stepmother and reflects his humility regarding his own appearance in photographs. October 4, 1859, by Samuel M. Fassett. Lincoln posed for this portrait at the studio of Cook and Fassett in Chicago. In 1865, Cook noted that Mrs. Lincoln considered it the most accurate likeness of her husband she had ever seen. This description highlights the significance of the portrait as endorsed by Lincoln's wife, reflecting its perceived fidelity to his appearance. February 27, 1860, by Matthew Brady. Matthew Brady's initial photograph of Lincoln was taken on the day of the Cooper Union speech. In the subsequent weeks, newspapers and magazines extensively covered the event, highlighting the enthusiastic atmosphere of the crowd and the impactful rhetoric delivered by Lincoln. Artists working for Harper's Weekly transformed Brady's photograph into a full-page woodcut portrait to accompany their story on Lincoln's success, and in October 1860, Leslie's Weekly used the same image to illustrate an article about the election. Brady himself sold numerous carte de visite photographs featuring the Illinois politician who had captivated the nation's attention. Brady recalled that he adjusted Lincoln's collar to enhance his appearance. Later versions of this famous portrait show that artists further refined Lincoln's appearance by smoothing his hair, facial lines, and correcting his left eye. After securing the Republican nomination and the presidency, Lincoln credited his success to the impact of his Cooper Union speech and this particular portrait, stating, "Brady and the Cooper Institute made me president." This narrative underscores the significance of Brady's photograph in shaping public perception and contributing to Lincoln's political ascent. May 9, 1860, by Edward A. Barnwell. Abraham Lincoln visited Decatur to attend the Illinois State Republican Convention. Local photographer Edward A. Barnwell, seeking to photograph the tallest individual at the convention, invited Lincoln to his People's Ambrotype Gallery at 24 North Water Street for a portrait session. The following day, after Richard Oglesby's introduction of Lincoln as the rail splitter, convention delegates unanimously endorsed Lincoln for the presidency. On May 18th, the National Republican Convention convened in Chicago and nominated Lincoln as the party's candidate for president. This account highlights Lincoln's participation in the Illinois State Republican Convention and the pivotal role of photography in capturing his image during this significant political moment. May 20th, 1860, by William Marsh. This is one of 5 photographs captured by William Marsh on behalf of Marcus Lawrence Ward. Despite Lincoln's widely read speeches in the eastern states, few had the opportunity to see the Illinois representative in person. This description emphasizes the importance of photographs in providing a visual connection to Lincoln for those who had only known him through his written words and speeches. June 3, 1860, by Alexander Hessler. At this sitting, Hessler captured a series of 4 portraits of Lincoln. His law partner, William Herndon, commented on this photograph, noting the unique features such as the distinctive curve of the lower lip, a solitary mole on the right cheek, and a pose of the head that embodies Lincoln's characteristic demeanor. Herndon remarked that no other artist had managed to capture these traits as authentically as Hessler did in this portrait. This passage highlights the meticulous observation and artistic skill of Hessler in creating a portrait that accurately reflected Lincoln's distinctive physical characteristics, as noted by those who knew him well. June 3, 1860, by Alexander Hessler. After viewing this photograph, along with his profile portrait from the same session, Lincoln commented, "That looks better and expresses me better than any I have ever seen. If it pleases the people, I am satisfied." 1860. Abraham Lincoln. This full-length photograph captures Lincoln's imposing physique and was commissioned for sculptor Henry Kirk Brown. It was discovered among Brown's belongings in 1931. This description highlights the purpose of the photograph in aiding the work of sculptor Henry Kirk Brown and its historical significance in the context of Lincoln's physical representation through art. August 13, 1860, by Preston Butler. This ambrotype represents the final photograph of Lincoln without a beard. John M. Redd hired Philadelphia artist John Henry Brown to create a miniature portrait of Lincoln, aiming for a handsome depiction regardless of the subject's appearance. The ambrotype was one of 6 taken on Monday, August 13, 1860, at Butler's daguerreotype studio. Only 2 of these ambrotypes are known to have survived, created specifically for the portrait painter. February 9, 1861, by Christopher S. German. This photograph was captured 2 days before his departure from Springfield on his journey to Washington, D.C. for his inauguration. This statement highlights the timing of the photograph in relation to Lincoln's significant transition from Springfield to assuming the presidency in Washington, D.C. February 24, 1861, by Alexander Gardner. This photograph was captured during President-elect Lincoln's initial photo session in Washington, D.C., the day following his arrival by train. This description highlights the timing of the photograph shortly after Lincoln's arrival in Washington, marking an important moment in his transition to assuming the presidency. March 1, 1861, Abraham Lincoln. This is the earliest photographic image of the new president, and interestingly, its exact origin remains uncertain. The existing examples of this portrait bear imprints from various photographers, including C.D. Fredericks & Co.'s of New York, W.L. German, and James E. McLeese, both of Philadelphia. Regarded as one of the most significant Lincoln photographs, an example of this portrait was sold at auction in 2009 for $206,500. This description highlights the historical importance and mystery surrounding the origin of this iconic photographic portrait of President Lincoln. 1863, by Lewis Emery Walker. Lincoln is depicted seated with an open coat and his customary gold watch chain, gifted to him in 1863 by a delegation from California. This description captures the specific details of Lincoln's attire and accessories in the photograph, reflecting elements of his personal style and historical significance. August 9, 1863, by Alexander Gardner, Lincoln's Visage Through the Lens. According to Dr. James Miner, Lincoln's large angular face appeared incredibly sorrowful and inscrutable when at rest, resembling that of a sphinx. His eyes seemed devoid of expression, akin to those of a lifeless fish. However, when Lincoln smiled or laughed, particularly in response to his own stories or those of others, a remarkable transformation occurred. His demeanor became animated, his countenance instantly lit up, and his eyes sparkled with vitality, revealing what Dr. Miner believed to be the most expressive features he had ever witnessed in a man's face. This description by Dr. James Miner provides a fascinating insight into Lincoln's facial expressions and their ability to convey a wide range of emotions, underscoring the depth and complexity of Lincoln's character. August 9, 1863, by Alexander Gardner. In this autographed carte de visite, Lincoln is depicted holding a newspaper in one hand and his eyeglasses in the other. This description highlights specific details captured in the photograph, showing Lincoln engaged in reading with his eyeglasses in hand. November 8, 1863, by Alexander Gardner. This iconic photograph of Lincoln was captured by Alexander Gardner on November 8, 1863, shortly before he delivered the Gettysburg Address. It is commonly known as the Gettysburg Portrait, although it was taken in Washington, not at the battlefield. Similar to his visit in August 1863, Lincoln visited Gardner's studio on a Sunday afternoon to sit for portraits. During this session, Lincoln posed for several additional photographs. This description highlights the historical context and setting of the photograph, emphasizing its association with the pivotal moment of the Gettysburg Address and Lincoln's visits to Gardner's studio for portrait sittings. November 8, 1863, by Alexander Gardner. This image highlights Lincoln's tall, slender legs. January 8, 1864, by Matthew Brady. Lincoln made multiple visits to Matthew Brady's studio in Washington, D.C. during 1864. Several portraits exist from each of these sessions. This description highlights Lincoln's frequent visits to Matthew Brady's studio and the resulting portraits that have been preserved from these encounters. February 9, 1864, by Anthony Berger. The Penny Profile. Berger, serving as the manager of Matthew Brady's gallery, captured multiple photographs during this Tuesday sitting. In 1909, Victor David Brenner utilized this image, along with another similar one from the same session, as the basis for modeling the design of the Lincoln Cent. February 9, 1864, by Anthony Berger. This is an authentic cracked glass plate, slightly smaller than what is known as an imperial size. The portrait of Lincoln featured on the current United States $5 bill is derived from this photograph. This description underscores the historical significance of the cracked glass plate and its influence on the design of the Lincoln portrait used on the currency. February 1865, by Lewis Emery Walker. The decision to give Lincoln a shorter haircut was likely recommended by his barber to ease the process of creating his life mask by Clark Mills. Lincoln understood the practicality of shorter hair, as longer hair could stick to plaster during such procedures. An 1865 stereograph, previously attributed to Matthew Brady but actually taken by Lewis Emery Walker, a government photographer, around February 1865. The photograph was published for Walker by the E&H.T. Anthony Coe of New York. This description provides insights into Lincoln's practical considerations regarding his haircut for the life mask process, as well as clarifying the attribution and origin of the stereograph photograph taken in 1865. February 5, 1865, by Alexander Gardner. This photograph of Lincoln was taken during a period when the weight of the presidency had visibly affected him. In February 1865, the final year of the Civil War, President Lincoln visited Gardner's studio on a Sunday, accompanied by the American portraitist Matthew Wilson. Wilson had been tasked with painting the president's portrait, but due to Lincoln's limited availability for posing, the artist required recent photographs to use as references. This description captures the historical context surrounding the creation of the photograph of Lincoln in 1865, highlighting the challenges faced by artists in capturing his likeness during a pivotal time in American history. February 5, 1865, Alexander Gardner. The photographs fulfilled their intended purpose, but the subsequent painting, a conventional, formal, bust-length portrait in an oval frame, lacks distinction and is largely forgotten today. In contrast, Gardner's candid photographs have endured far more, despite not originally being intended as standalone artistic works. This assessment reflects on the differing legacies of the photographs and the painting created from them, highlighting the enduring appeal of Gardner's candid images over the more conventional portrait painting. February 5, 1865, by Alexander Gardner. Frank Goodyear, the National Portrait Gallery's photo curator, considers this to be the final formal portrait of Abraham Lincoln before his assassination. He appreciates it for the subtle smile on Lincoln's face, suggesting a sense of optimism. With the inauguration approaching and the war nearing its end, Lincoln allows a glimpse of hope for brighter days ahead, a departure from his usual solemn demeanor during his presidency. This interpretation by Frank Goodyear provides valuable insight into the historical context and emotional significance conveyed by Lincoln's expression in the portrait. The last photo of President Abraham Lincoln. Henry Ulke, a professional photographer residing in the boarding house where Lincoln was brought after being shot, captured the photograph without permission. As you explore the stories behind these rare photos of Abraham Lincoln, you embark on a captivating journey through history, witnessing the life and legacy of one of America's most iconic figures. Each photograph unveils a unique facet of Lincoln's character and the turbulent era in which he led. Subscribe to our channel to uncover more hidden gems and captivating stories from history. Don't miss out on the opportunity to delve deeper into the remarkable life of Abraham Lincoln through the lens of rare and historical photographs. Subscribe today and be part of our journey into the past.